Yes. Welcome back to another episode of Go Long live from Radio Row. Yes, we are live from Radio Row all week long, right here on CoachellaValley.com. Today's California.com. Today's Canada.com. We are live on Twitterverse, on the universe, on the metaverse, all over the world. We are live right here from Radio Row. I am your host, Barry Long II. Not the first, not the third. I am the second. And let me bring in my main man, Rudy Ramon Reyes. Rudy, how you doing, boss?
Hey, man, I'm doing good. We have a lot of stuff going on. Of course, tomorrow, players are going to hit the podium. So I'm going to be covering the Cincinnati Bengals and asking them questions. It's going to be about 45 minutes worth of goodness. And of course, Barry's going to go cover the LA Rams. And so we're going to have a little bit of our own questions in regards to everything related to the Super Bowl, how it led up to this point, and basically just get it all together and call it a day and wish those guys good luck.
Yeah, it's been a fun experience. You were here yesterday. We got to interview some different people. Go ahead and tell them a little bit about Ian Book. You interviewed Ian Book yesterday.
Ian Book absolutely was very humble. Very humble, very nice young man. Certainly spoke the truth in regards to off-season workouts, things that he'll need to ascertain to be able to come up with what 2022 would look like, and whether or not he gets a starting position, that remains to be seen. There is some tutelage that still needs to happen. We talked about Taysom Hill with his thumb injury. We also discussed Jameis Winston going down there. So the interview will be had and it'll be posted on the RudeDogShow.com. So stay tuned for that one. It's a great interview.
Absolutely. We also got a chance to sit down with Trey Wingo, former ESPN colleague. We also got to sit down with Jim Everett.
Wingo's such an almanac. And Jim Everett, oh my gosh, that guy is hilarious. He's absolutely hilarious. But he speaks the truth. I mean, we were talking about the Rams. We were talking about how what it actually looks like, and the Rams finally playing a Super Bowl back in Los Angeles, obviously at a brand new facility. And not the LA Coliseum when they faced off against the Steelers. So, good stuff from Jim Everett for sure.
Absolutely. All right, we got some comments already live from Bill Senso. He says, hello. We appreciate you for tuning in each and every day, Bill. We love you, man. Alex Lowe says, greetings from Knoxville, Tennessee. Shout out to Knoxville, Tennessee, my people out there.
Thanks, Alex. Thanks for joining.
And Sohail Khan says, how are you? We're doing well. We're doing very well. We're doing better than the Nets are doing right now. I can tell you that because we saw a blockbuster trade that went down just recently. And it was one that kind of raised some eyebrows if you're a Nets fan, or I'm sorry, if you're a Sixers fan and a Nets fan. So we saw Ben Simmons get traded for James Harden, and there were more players involved than just those two. You had Ben Simmons, Seth Curry, Andre Drummond, and 2 first-round draft picks all going to the 76ers. A ton that they're getting back for James Harden. The Sixers only got James Harden and Paul Millsap. So that was according to Adrian Wojnarowski of ESPN. So if you're a Philadelphia 76ers fan, you lost Ben Simmons, who you knew was not going to play this season at all due to mental health reasons or his issues with the front office. You knew for a fact that James Harden wasn't going to play on the other side for quite some time. About 2 or 3 weeks, we found out ago that James Harden will not be dressing out for the Nets ever again. And he basically demanded a trade. He was a little apprehensive to demand a trade because of the optics of him demanding a trade out of Houston. Now, like less than a year later, he's demanding another trade out of a situation that was better than what he was in Houston. So he really didn't want to push for a trade, but he did kind of underneath the table, backhanded, kind of made this happen. And the 76ers on their side, I'm flabbergasted because we talked about it yesterday. The trade with Buddy Hield and Sabonis, and basically it was for a ham sandwich. Well, this is they got rid of Harden for a lot. I mean, this is a big haul. And the one key player in this whole situation, in this whole trade, that I felt bad for was Seth Curry, because Seth Curry, who is one of the top shooters in the NBA right now as far as field goal percentages from the three-point line. He's also the son-in-law of Doc Rivers. They had a great relationship. Doc Rivers has a great relationship with all of his players, but especially his son, Austin Rivers, when he was coaching him, and his son-in-law. So that's a little sad part of the trade. But what are your thoughts on the Nets getting all that for Harden?
Well, Harden is basically a bag of Doritos that's been sitting out for a while, and these Skittles. And Skittles that I seem to be slipping on the floor right now, and I think that's one of the reasons why you find a guy like James Harden who's demanded a trade. Again, well, I'm not going to say again. When you're a professional player, you have to be able to recognize your trade value, what that's worth, what that actually looks like, and what other teams are going to be looking at you from not only a player standpoint, but can we build around James Harden? Now, look, the guy's aged, he's had injuries, still a very solid shooter. He knows how to just post you up. He knows how to break your ankles. He's done it for so many years, but he's got a lot of mileage on it and really nothing to show for. And with that trade, put the 76ers in a situation where now it's almost like a win now scenario, a win now mindset. And when you're in that mindset, barring any injuries, we haven't even talked about those. If those injuries go down, James Harden or anybody else, they're in some deep trouble. And this is a win now mentality for the 76ers. I think, moreover, when you look at the second round picks, the $2 million in cash, it was the 76ers who got the better end of the deal. There's no doubt about that, only from the standpoint of being able to acquire and retain these guys. Now, Ben Simmons, clearly the odd man out. When I say odd, I'm almost convinced that he's an odd duck. I'm not sure that he could be the odd guy out, but he's very odd in this situation because he wasn't going to play. He did have disputes with the front office, obviously not happy with the mental health. And again, I mentioned Antonio Brown. I think maybe Antonio reached out to him and told him about the mental wealth that he certainly needs to acquire
sure.
because he wasn't going to get it in a 76ers uniform. So, it's something to be said for now the bigger three, not just James Harden, but the bigger three. But can Ben Simmons assimilate? Can he acclimate his play if he does play? I'm not saying he will. Then again, we thought he was going to play with 76ers, but he didn't play well with others. But can he play well with the remaining components that are now in the 76ers? I seen a quote earlier today in regards to, another player shall remain nameless. No, not really. It's Kevin Durant, who said, look, we're going to welcome him. He's going to be part of the system, and we're just going to have him play and ask of him to do what, James Harden would do. Now they got a solid guy, under center. Could he be that center piece? Is he a tweener, kind of like a Kyle Kuzma guy where he was using a utility capacity? We don't know yet. We don't know how this is all going to shape out, whether or not Ben Simmons can ultimately find his place there. But that bag of nachos is just nacho year for Ben Simmons. There's no, I can't get that out of my head. Thank you, Barry, for that. By the way, the whole nacho year thing. This is not Ben Simmons' year because he chooses to sit out. It's almost similar to that of looking at Kyrie Irving, saying, "Man, are you going to get the shot? Are you just going to get it done and be able to be a full-time player instead of a barista at Starbucks?" Or at Dunkin' Donuts, or
and
Randy's Donuts in LA. I mean, take your pick. There's a lot of donut places.
I just went to Winchell's earlier today.
Well, see, there you go. There you go. Was he there? I guess that's a bigger question. Was he the guy there? Probably not.
And the thing about the Nets, them, what they did was they basically got a king's ransom back, in my opinion. I mean, Ben Simmons, if Ben Simmons is able to work and he's able to perform the way that he performed earlier on in his career, they've got Kyrie Irving, they've got Ben Simmons, they've got Kevin Durant. If you would think that on paper that looks like at least an automatic trip to the NBA Finals.
Well,
I mean,
if they all with James Harden in there too, but that didn't quite pan out. Now, did it?
Yeah, I know.
The big three. Come on, man. This is not a superstar. This is almost not a superstar year for the NBA. And when I say that, I mean accumulatively. When you look at the Lakers rosters, you mentioned Lakers did absolutely nothing. They weren't sellers. They should have been, but they weren't sellers. They're going to stick it out. They're going to suck it up, and they're going to see what they can figure out with Russell Westbrook, Carmelo Anthony, LeBron James, all three very aged players. Of course, we know LeBron has more chips than either one of those guys, but has chips, and those guys have none. But they continue to play as if they're going to get something. Now, that picture is going to be exactly what you guys are going to be looking at, but the roles will be reversed.
Yes,
and I would like to see that matchup, how that's going to pair out. It's probably going to be the same. It's not going to be. It was a very exciting move. I think Sacramento was a more head scratching move, considering the components and people that they had in place in order to make that trade. Again, another bag of Skittles and nacho year for Sacramento, still under 500, and the 76ers finding themselves at par, just like the Brooklyn Nets, who keep sliding. Again, this is not a superstar driven league. I mean, yeah, okay, fine. Gold State won the other night. Well, wonderful for them. Steph Curry, I was listening to on Sirius XM yesterday. Yes, I've said it. I said Sirius XM. I was listening to the Chicago Bulls play against the Charlotte Hornets, and it was if Chicago was building that momentum, not without DeMar DeRozan, not without those other components, those other guys, but to see a big three, a big four, an all-star lineup, things of that nature. Even though we're headed to the all-star break, these teams are going to essentially play out where you're going to find Golden State in the playoffs. You're going to find maybe, I doubt it, but maybe the Lakers somewhere find the pot of gold or the fountain of youth or whatever analogy you want to use. I don't know if the Lakers will ever get there, at least not this year. They got a lot of offseason stuff to worry about, I'm sure, more than enough to go around, especially in the City of Angels. But I think overall, 76ers did get the better of the deal, to be quite honest with you.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's been a lot of criticism for what Daryl Morey has been able to do as far as being a 76ers GM. And he's gotten a lot of criticism for, his unwillingness to trade Ben Simmons. But they finally got it done. And we'll see. This could potentially turn out well for both teams.
It could very well.
I'm sorry?
Yeah, no, it could very well turn out great for both teams.
I mean,
absolutely. It depends on chemistry.
Yeah, it definitely depends on the chemistry, and you can only hope that both these guys figure it out, because they seem to have some personal mental health issues that have hindered their careers. And both of these guys are top talents when they first came into the league, raw talent, and you just hope that this trade does work out for the best of them. We are live on CoachellaValley.com, today's California.com, today's Canada.com. He is Rudy Reyes. I am Barry Long II, not the first, not the third. Now, we had another blockbuster trade, a team that was really it was assembled to basically be kind of a super team and to attract more free agents. We saw that the Mavericks, when they went out and they had Luka Doncic, they said, let's get this guy some help. They went out and got Kristaps Porzingis. That chemistry never worked out. You just mentioned chemistry. Those guys could never seem to figure out how to get it done when they were on the floor together. And Kristaps Porzingis was very salty when last year in the playoffs, when he wasn't getting enough playing time after coming back from injury. And it was basically Mark Cuban and the Dallas Mavericks had to choose. Are we going to go Kristaps Porzingis, or are we going to go Luka Doncic, who is a prolific player in the NBA? Although he might not be the most athletic, he definitely is one of the most savvy and one of the best scorers that we have in the game. He's not even that great defensively. But that was a problem that they had.
Nobody's that great defensively in the NBA this year. Are you joking? Teams don't even know how to spell defense. The only thing they know how to spell defense is deodorant, and that has more letters than the word defense in it, okay? There is no defense. It's an offense-driven league, and that's just the way that it is right now. Whether or not that will change, whether you're going to see any splash plays from anybody defensively, the swats, the aggressive, get that out of my face, knock down, drag out defensive battles. You haven't seen that, and I think you hadn't seen that probably the last 3 or 4 years in the NBA.
Do you miss the 80s style defense where they were allowed to hand check, and if you came through the lane against the Detroit Pistons, the bad boy Pistons, and you ended up on the ground with a concussion and maybe a broken leg?
Bring it. The more defensive if this league could be more defensive, I think it would be offensive for other people, and other people would be offended by it because they would just be mind blown. Wait,
I saw what you did there.
Did you just swat something? Yeah. Did you just swat something down off before get that thing out of here? Get that junk out of my face. Are you joking? I mean, this has got to be the most. It's better for Porzingis, to be honest with you. Okay. His average salary is probably around $32 million. He's an unrestricted free agent in just over a year and a half. So he has the ability to go somewhere and really get some money. Now, his guaranteed was over almost $160 million, which is for us like forever and 10 days to get. But more importantly, he's already shown exponentially that he can get it done, and he's just that kind of guy. But I like the fact that they sent it to a team who needs a guy like Porzingis, who needs the scoring. Don't forget, Beal's down indefinitely throughout the remainder of the season. He has a broken wrist, so he has to contend with that. You got to go through therapy, a lot of PT. This is a healing process. So they could have done anything better than to get Porzingis in there and in there now to help stop the bloodletting for Washington because he just keeps slipping down the Eastern Conference like the bobsled we see in the Olympics.
Speaking of Olympics, have you been watching the Winter Olympics?
I actually have. I want to say Jimmy Chen, but I could be wrong. I could be thinking of a movie, but his last name is Chen,
Yeah, yeah,
and he won a gold medal,
yeah.
by the way, in his efforts, which was absolutely fantastic. Then I watched the women's slalom
Mm,
skeleton mode, yes, and
mm.
Canada, I believe, hit number one. I believe Canada's number one, eh? So they actually look pretty good. Some of the women, not a lot of body control when it comes to the downhill portions of it, going around the corners. They drag their feet on the ground, and in turn, really isn't a whole lot of. You lose your momentum, you lose your speed, you lose the
Hmm.
ability to keep your form on the slalom. Now, I've never slalom, I can't speak to that, but I have snowboarded, which is nowhere near the equivalent. But it's still snow and it's still ice. Okay, that's the comparison. I guess that's all we can do. That's all we can hope for, right? Unless I'm
Yeah.
out there making slushies. But no, I mean, when you you have to keep your body on the sled like completely in its entirety. You can't let bumps get your feet knocked off of the sled, or you're going to cause drag, which ultimately what slows you down. And when you get slowed down, your time decreases being able to get to that first place chip. So very, very interesting. Not obviously no one in attendance, but the cameras. But when they cross the finish line, I really like the camera work there because what they do is they go through multiple angles. They go to the left side, the middle side, and then the
Yeah.
right side.
It's
That's
intriguing.
actually pretty cool. But outside of that, that's about all I've watched
Yeah,
so
and
far at the Olympics. But go USA!
go USA. And I love me some. The only thing I really know about bobsledding is cool runnings. But I did watch some Chloe Kim. All right, so we are Go Long Live. I am Very Long II. He is Rudy Ramon Reyes. We are live from Radio Row. And we're talking about Kristaps Porzingis. And he was traded to Washington for Spencer Dinwiddie and Davis Bertans. There was a few other players that were involved in this trade. And the Wizards went out and made some more moves. They dished Montrezl Harrell to the Hornets for Vernon Carey Jr. and Ish Smith. So the Washington Wizards are a little bit busy during this little trade deadline that we had. And yeah, you're right. I do like Porzingis going to Washington. I like him getting away from that environment of not being the first fiddle, because when he was in New York, his production was high. Was at an all-time high. And they
Don't
remember
forget
people
the
were
Knicks
calling him.
also have their own issues right now, so they're not allowing anybody to really kind of take the floor. Randall's there was a scuffle between him and I think it was like a co-assistant manager or something like that. I don't know, but it's bad. I wouldn't want to be in New York either.
But yeah, but yeah, I do like this. I do really like this Kristaps Porzingis trade. But Spencer Dinwiddie going to the Mavericks. Now, how do you feel about that? Because Spencer Dinwiddie is a point guard slash shooting guard, combo guard kind of guy, and he's not really able to do much if he doesn't have the basketball in his hands. And we know that Luka Doncic is one of the most ball dominant players in the NBA. So, do you think that Spencer Dinwiddie and Luka Doncic could get together and play together and have good chemistry?
Well, don't forget David Bertans is also a part of that as well. So when you talk about both of these guys, you're looking at Dinwiddie, who really hasn't had an opportunity to play to the extent that I believe that he actually can. He's not in the lineup right now. He's a native of Colorado, but a guy who's got plenty of minutes on the floor, 30 minutes. He's almost 5 rebounds, almost 6 assists. So when you put him on the floor, he has the ability to make things happen with assists, especially. He's just that kind of guy. He moves in and out of the paint really well. He knows how to set players up really well. Points in the paint. He had 5 against the Clippers. There's a lot of things to like about Dinwiddie, and Bertans is probably about the same kind of guy, the same type of player. So I could see both these guys get acclimated really, really soon. And honestly, I believe Porzingis is a really good position to be the man, to be the guy right now in
Yeah, with Bill
Washington.
out.
And exactly, and he'll be able to ball out and do his thing and be able to put some slamma jamma mammo right down the throat of would-be defenders going to the hole and calling it a day. Because that's just who he is. But he hasn't been in a situation where he can actually thrive in. And I think here he has the opportunity to do just that. Honestly, I believe both of these teams win in this trade. I don't think there's a loser or a winner in this. I think it was an even trade for teams that are kind of at par right now. I mean, look, Dinwiddie's averaging almost 13 points per game, and almost 5 rebounds. So he's not spectacular, but again, he's effective. Once you put him on the floor, he's certainly that kind of guy to make things happen. So again, I think this was a fantastic trade, probably the best. Now, the Lakers probably could have done something, but you know what
The
they say: coulda,
Lakers.
woulda, shoulda, but did nothing. Nada contigo. So there
And
it
let's
is.
talk
There,
about
best
that.
Spanish I got.
Let's talk about that. I do agree with you that not all trades are better for both sides, and this is one trade that feels like it could be better for both sides. So I do agree with you on that as well. But yeah, let's talk about the Lakers now. We're both Laker fans. Lakers making zero moves, zilch, nada, no moves at the trade deadline, and they say that they're shifting their focus right now to the buyout market. There's a few players that do want out, and they might be able to go out and get some. But what do you think about the Lakers sticking with Russell Westbrook? Do you like the move? Because there are a lot of Lakers people in Lakers Nation that don't think that Russell and LeBron and AD can figure it out by the time that they get to the playoffs, if they even get in the playoffs. I, for one, feel like Russell Westbrook, his minutes should be a little bit trimmed, especially late in the games, late in game situations when the game's on the line, because of his turnovers and his inability to make effective decisions. But I do think that he's good for the team, quarters 1 through 3. And I think that he brings a lot of energy and he brings a lot of intensity and he burns up minutes for guys like LeBron James. So he gives LeBron James the ability to rest throughout the course of the game. But when the game is on the line, I feel like you should take Russell Westbrook out of the game. and I feel like them making no moves is not the end of the world. If they could easily go on a winning streak, if everybody figures it out, and we could end up, looking back at this time that right now and saying, "Hey, man, we were all doubting them, but they're back." What are your thoughts?
I don't think the Lakers are going anywhere but down, to be quite honest with you. Even though fans were screaming for Lakers to do something, even I did. I posted a Lake Show with two eyeballs scene, and it had a scene in Caddyshack, and it said, "Well, I'm waiting," and of course, nothing actually happened at all. The Lakers just seen the deadline come and go. Of course, there was no deal, no trade for Russell Westbrook, which is sad to say the very least. And look, it's not that I'm not a fan of Russell Westbrook. It's just that you had stated it well, that when he doesn't put when the game's not on his shoulders, he's fine. He knows how to play. He does his job. He does it effectively. But when the game's on the line, he seems to freeze. And he has this almost, you don't give the ball to him in the last 30 seconds or a minute in order to win the game, because more likely he'll end up losing the game. And I hate to say that about a guy who's done so much for other teams that he's been on. But I mean, he comes over to the Laker team and he's shooting like this. I mean, to be quite honest with you, the team that won you that bubble championship, and I hate to say bubble championship because there was really the only thing protecting them from COVID was the protocol and were the hotels that they were ultimately staying at, and the close facilities where people can't come in and play. So outside of that, they proved their worth. I can't say so much for the Dodgers, who only played 60 games and ended up winning a championship the same year. But their best bet would have been to keep those guys together. Even though they were going to test the market, you would have been well suited to take that full-blown deal that you gave, guaranteed from AD, and spread that around and keep Alex Caruso, who has the energy. He's been doing absolutely fantastic. Other players, Brandon Ingram, who's been doing fantastic things in New Orleans.
Yes.
Former Lakers have been doing great elsewhere. Why? Because there's really no answer for that other than they're playing their respective game. It helped the Lakers lead them to a championship. But when you don't keep those pieces together and you think by getting an older roster, okay, and fine, for all intents and purposes, I was not on that old double ARP bandwagon, okay, and that's got the double ARP wrap on the top, the old school wagons back in the 1800s with the buggies and stuff. I was totally on board with that. But the problem with that is that the horses left without the carriage, and this is where the carriage sits, in the middle of despicableness. And I don't even know if that's a word, but
despicability.
So, that too. Rob Pelinka is partially to blame for this. Jeannie Buss is partially to blame for this. And I don't know that Vogel has the same swagger that he did in regards to player management, in regards to time management. That he did in the bubble that he has right now. and again, he's lost the locker room. It was very frustrating to see them lose to the Portland Trailblazers. But moreover, this is just going from bad to worse. When you look at the body mechanics of the Lakers players on the sidelines, it did not look very good. It's almost as if they just tanked and lost it and said, whatever, who cares? And then you get Millsap traded to the 76ers. I mean, I'll be honest with you, the Lakers, unless Russell Wilson decides to do something and
Westbrook.
change his game up, share the ball where he needs to, become that willing passer. He's not 25 anymore, okay? He's getting up there.
Yeah,
not
he
quite
is.
LeBron age, but he's getting up there. A lot of miles, nothing to show for it. Sound familiar? James Harden, we were just talking about him. But I think, moreover, if he figures it out, I mean Russell Westbrook, things can turn around for this team. But it's really about the sharing of the ball, being the willing passer, not giving you – okay, Russell Westbrook will never be Kobe Bryant, okay? First and foremost, let me just send that straight out. He's not going to be a Steph Curry who's cooking in the kitchen. He's not going to be that guy you want the ball in her hands with 3 seconds left on the clock, okay? The guy you put the ball in the hands to is LeBron James.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is that because of his injuries and mileage catching up to him, he's been out with injuries as well. So the Lakers, unfortunately, are going to run this out. They're going to ride it out. They're sellers at this point, but they didn't sell anything. They had and we talked about this before. All they had was THT and a 2027 first round pick.
Yeah.
That was it. That's all they had. Nothing else. So I want to see something that makes sense, because right now this Laker team does not make any sense to me at all.
Yeah, and Frank Vogel is a guy that has been criticized widely for stuff like having inconsistent rotations. Like, there were some times where you didn't know who was going to be playing center. Maybe he said, and even this year we've had inconsistent rotations. We've seen games where LeBron James is playing the 5. But one thing about Frank Vogel is he was able to figure it out, and he's always had a good defense. This year is probably the worst team he's ever had defensively in his entire career, and that includes the time that he spent with the Indiana Pacers. Do you think that if Frank Vogel cannot will this team to the playoffs, is Frank Vogel out in LA?
I think so. I think there's a lot more questions than answers right now for the LA Lakers. And when you're talking about what's going to happen, who's going to be the next leader, what happens, and we've seen this in all other professional sports. We've seen it with Doug Pederson of the Philadelphia Eagles. You know, he's out after the following year after winning a championship. You know, and he was eating a Philly. He was eating the sub sandwich on the sidelines, watching the Philly special roll out. You know what I mean? So it's really about what Vogel's able to do for the remainder of the season. And when I say remainder, there's still plenty of basketball left. Don't get me wrong, but something needs to turn around quick, and I mean quick, in order to get this Lakers team in even a remote conversation of playoff contention. Because right now they're on the outside looking in.
Now this is an interesting trade that we also saw. The Pacers, the Portland Trailblazers, rather. They have been in a conundrum with trying to figure out what they were going to do with Damian Lillard. He wanted out of town reportedly during the offseason, and then he rebuted, though he refused to accept that was something that was true. He said that he was not going to leave the Pacers, or the Blazers, rather. He's always been a Blazers player, and he always wants to be a Blazers player. They brought in Chauncey Billups to be the head coach, who was more player friendly than Terry Stotts was before. And he was a point guard, so he can really look into the psyche of Damian Lillard and really understand, the guy that is Damian Lillard, and connect with him on a different level than, maybe Terry Stotts could. So they've been able to keep Damian Lillard, but CJ McCollum is a guy that, these two guys together were considered the best backcourt maybe of all time besides Steph and Clay, at least the top 3 backcourt right now. And now they've been broken up. We've seen CJ McCollum has been traded to the New Orleans Pelicans in a 7-player trade. There's a lot of other players, a lot of other moving parts to this trade. You've got New Orleans. They're sending Josh Hart from the Pelicans to the Blazers as well. And then the Pelicans are going to get Larry Nance, Tony Snell. They're getting Satoransky. So there's a lot of different moving parts in this equation. But what are your thoughts on CJ McCollum going to New Orleans? And do you think that he makes them better and he can gel with Zion Williamson?
I really believe that CJ McCollum is a guy who just he reminds me so much of the train that thought it could. and he tried it. He tried it in Portland, didn't quite work out
Yeah.
that well. Of course, there were times where he just looked absolutely sharp. He doesn't really care anything about California. I've seen some of his tweets, and I don't know. It's kind of a head scratcher. But outside of that, I think the pairing will work well with Zion Williamson. To be quite honest with you, he'll know when to get it inside to the big man. Obviously, one of the bigger centers. The problem with Zion Williamson that I've noticed that he's not extremely in shape, and he kind of
Yeah.
ballooned
He's
up a
too
little
much.
bit from a
Too much
physical
combo.
standpoint. And he needs to get back in the locker room. Yeah, you have to have size, but you have to have athleticism to correlate with that size, and those two have to be working parts together. So I think CJ McCollum is a guy that can work well with Zion Williamson. I thought it was a fantastic move. Larry Nance Jr., another former LA Laker, on the move with Tony Snell. And of course, the Blazers in return, Nikolai Alexander Watker and Thomas Satoransky. These guys are basically bench warmers, to be quite honest with you. Could they turn
Yes,
into
they are.
something? Well, we don't know. Could be part of some type of rotation, maybe garbage minutes at the end of the fourth quarter, or near the end of the fourth quarter. So it's really hard to tell what these guys are going to fit into in relation to Larry Nance and Snell and the aforementioned. But I think it's really about chemistry, and we're talking about ownership, and to be a great coach. I think when you mentioned Chauncey Billups in that from that perspective, his mindset, his attitude towards what the game looks like, what the game actually should be, and how that interprets into having a better point guard be the best point guard that there is. I think Portland still has some things to work out in regards to that, but the Trailblazers certainly want to work around and build around Damian Lillard, which should be obviously expected. He doesn't want to play anywhere else. And I think before the trade deadline even happened, before CJ McCollum was even moved out of Portland, I think that it was his mindset to stay there. I don't think he had any reason whatsoever, because look, players want to demand a trade. If they want to demand a trade, they have to be vocal about demanding that trade, and you have to go to the right people in order to make that happen. But he's not a James Harden. He's a system guy. He
Yeah.
likes his system. He enjoys his system. He loves the fans. The fans love him. They've made him a lot of money, the NBA a lot of money, through ticket sales, through merchandise, memorabilia, things of that nature. So the only thing that needs to happen in Portland, they need to go into the draft. They've given him a couple first-round pick in the 2022 NBA draft, which will be
Hmm.
coming up following the season, or excuse me, near the end of the season. And I think that this is going to be a way to build around. Now, there are other moving parts behind the scenes, probably, but right now, I think this is probably a very good move for Portland. But I believe, again, winners, there are no losers. This is a
Hmm.
winner. This is a win-win situation. I hate to use that cliche, but it's true. When you
Yeah.
get a guy like CJ McCollum to team up Zion Williamson, this could be the dish to the big guy to the dish. You know what I mean? So you get
Yeah.
someone inside of the paint, you know, CJ McCollum could stick it to Zion Williamson in a very sharp passing situation where he's double guarded, so he's not very good at the line, but at least he'll get the points while he's there. So good stuff. I really think both teams are winners.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with you there too as well, because yeah, the inside outside game is going to be crucial with those two guys. And Zion Williamson and CJ McCollum are both guys that can play along with superstars, play with with guys that are just role players. They acquiesce their game to the personnel that's out there with them. So I like CJ McCollum and Zion Williamson playing together. You still got Brandon Ingram down there, so there could be a lot of exciting things coming out of New Orleans in the future. The future looks very bright for New Orleans. So, and as long as Zion Williamson can slim down and stay in shape. Now, before we get out of here, we will both be covering the Rams and the Bengals practices tomorrow. Their interview events. What are you most excited? Who are you most excited tomorrow to see at the Bengals?
Well, I know you were talking about the Burrow fever. I'm kind of
Ooh.
burrowed in, so I'm going to be excited to see what Joe Burrow does under pressure from guys like Von Miller, from Aaron Donald, from outside pass rushing, that whole nine sack situation in that in the championship game. It's always going to sit there, and it's going to sit there when they went to Tennessee, and something similar happened there as well. So there's a lot of moving parts. I think they just need to provide Joe some very solid protection, better than what they have done for him. And I think this would probably serve them really good because he's cool under pressure. That's why he says Joe Cool the second, maybe the third. I'm not quite sure.
Yeah.
Joe, he's better under duress than I think Tom Brady was as time has passed. For Tom Brady, obviously decided to retire after 22 seasons in the NFL. He's a modern day GOAT, greatest of all time. Obviously, you can't have the comparison. You can't compare apples to oranges. The whole different league in the NFL back in the 70s, 80s, 90s, and now. But he is a modern day GOAT. So just a lot of Joe Burrow questions. If I can ask more than one, I don't know. Maybe they'll give me two if the first one's good.
Yeah.
We'll find out. What's actually exciting you about the Rams? Is it the McVay getting the McMonkey off his back finally,
Yeah.
or
The McMonkey? Sounds like
the
a new
McMonkey?
sounds like a new McDonald's burger. They
if
McDonald's
it has
dropped the
monkey, I
lamb
don't
Air
want
and
it.
Sea burger. Did you see that? They have it on every McDonald's menu now. You can get
Yeah.
the fish fillet, the chicken sandwich, and the Big Mac. I thought it was just a secret menu item, but no, it is now
That's ridiculous.
everywhere.
If I was eating a hamburger, it would be the In-N-Out secret menu. But anyway, that's another story for another day. But are you excited about the McVay, finally getting that win, getting that dub? Is it more about the three-headed running back monster? If Cam Akers can actually play? I was listening to, and the reason why it's kind of a two-part question, I was asking in regards to what that means to you and what kind of question would you ask Coach McVay? We'll start there.
What kind of question would I ask Coach McVay?
Yes.
I would ask him about his daily routine and just and really I'd ask him about his diet too. but yeah, I'd ask him some questions about some of his trickery plays, when he feels like it's time to bust one out, because he had an amazing trickery play where it was a flea flicker off and turned into a screen, which
Right.
netted a lot of yards. And I don't know. I would ask him a million things. So I'm gonna have to sleep tonight and think about the one question I'm gonna get to ask him, or the two questions I'm gonna get to ask him.
Yeah,
But
if the first one's good, you may get a second.
yeah, that's the one I'm most excited about, is Sean McVay, and of course Odell Beckham. Maybe I'll have to ask him a question too. But yeah, Sean McVay is the guy that I want to see live and interview the most. So we are going to be breaking down the entire game tomorrow. We'll go an hour long tomorrow, and we'll really dive deep into our picks, what we think is going to happen, the point spread, and will they cover or not, and we'll get really, really deep as we get closer and closer to the Super Bowl Sunday that is coming. And we are live from Radio Row tomorrow, and it's going to be enjoyable. Rudy, tell them where they can find you at, man.
You can go to at Reyes on Twitter. You can find me on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram. You can find me anywhere. So stay tuned. Of course, like I said earlier at the beginning of the broadcast, we have a lot of great content forthcoming. So stay tuned for that. Today, matter of fact, I interviewed Aaron Taylor, former Super Bowl champion, Super Bowl 31 to be exact. And fantastic guy. Love talking to him. And he went kind of on a tyrant on Twitter, stating that the good thing about wearing a mask, if somebody farts, you're not going to know it because you have a mask on. I was going to ask her that question on air. I just said, "Wait, what?"
It is true.
Say that? But
it is true. You can't
he was
smell
open and honest about it. That was just that's just Aaron being Aaron. I don't know how else to explain that, but. If somebody else is going to cut gas, you got a mask on. How would you even know?
Wow.
Kind of
Wow.
I'm just saying, I don't know. But yeah, we're going to be live tomorrow as well. I'll be there covering the Cincinnati Bengals and their press conference. And then Barry will be covering the Los Angeles Rams. And then after that, after 45 minutes of conversation and questions, then we sit back and watch on Super Bowl Sunday and see who gets that W. Not that I'm rooting for the Bengals wins. I'm not rooting for another AFC North team. I'd rather be the Steelers. Oh, and by the way, just for those that don't know, TJ Watt won Defensive Player of the Year, rightfully
Bravo. Yes.
Congratulations, TJ Watt. Of course, I had a chance to ask him a question in the forum after he was given his Defensive Player of the Year award. And essentially that question is off-season workouts have been great between him and his brother for the past few years. How does he feel about being one of the greats in not only Steelers history, but in the honor of the Defensive Player of the Year award, which is fantastic. Michael Parsons, Defensive Rookie of the year. That was kind of a no-brainer. He
Yeah,
had almost
for sure.
18.5 pressures per game on opposing quarterbacks during the
Man.
2022 regular season and a playoff appearance as well. So a lot of good stuff. I don't know who the NFL MVP was. That's about all the information that I have on that, but I'm sure NFL Network will be replaying the honors
And we'll talk about that
as they
tomorrow
were
too.
tonight. Yeah, we'll talk about that tomorrow as well. So anyway, this is Rudy Reyes right here on the Go Long Live show. And don't forget, we have something new coming
Yes,
as well. So stay
next week.
tuned for a let's just say it's not
Aaron,
Raisin Brand.
and by the way, Aaron
Oh,
Rodgers was MVP. Shout
Sean
out to
Sean
Sean. He said
McNeil
Aaron Rodgers was
chimed in.
MVP.
Rodgers was MVP. Well, thank you for that. We appreciate it.
2 times
We're
in a row, back to back.
back to back. So that right there just raises his salary. No, I'm just kidding. It raises a lot of questions whether or not he's going to stay in Green Bay. I think he will, but again, whole off season, lots of shifts, lots of changes. Steelers acquired a new defensive coordinator after Keith Butler announces his retirement. New wide receiver coach for the Steelers as well. Hopefully prevent some drops by Deontay Johnson. One could only cross your fingers and
I saw
toes
the
and
way you
hope that
rolled your
doesn't
eyes.
happen.
That hurt. That
Another
came
story
from
in
a deep
itself.
place.
I'm trying to breathe deeply on that one, but yeah. Anyway, thank you guys for tuning in. I appreciate it, love it, like it, but please share it because we love the shares. We appreciate everybody tuning in, and of course, your comments are always welcome. So
Absolutely.
thank you.
And we have some big news that we're going to drop on Monday, but we will be back tomorrow. We'll talk about the game. We'll break it down. This point
Drop
spread,
it
like I
like it's
said.
hot.
Shout out to Sean McNeil for commenting, my boy. Shout out to William Senso, Bill Senso. We love you for tuning
Thank you,
in each
Bill.
and every time.
Appreciate you.
Alex and Sohel, we appreciate
Thank
all
you,
the comments that
Alex.
we're getting.
So hell, we're good, man. Glad you're doing well. Thanks a lot for tuning in.
Yes, we are doing good. We are doing great. All right, you guys, stay focused, stay motivated, stay inspired, and remember, you're capable of doing anything. So go out and do it. We will see you tomorrow. Peace.